The year is 1274. A large Mongol-led invasion fleet is on its way to Japan, crossing the Sea of Japan toward the island of Tsushima. The fleet consists of hundreds of ships carrying a mixed force of Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers, part of the first major attempt by the Mongol Empire to invade Japan. On Tsushima, a small Japanese force prepares to resist. The defenders include approximately 80 samurai and their retainers, led by the island's governor, Sō Sukekuni. They know they are outnumbered, and that reinforcements will not come. Still, they choose to fight. To understand the sheer madness of what was about to unfold on the beaches of Tsushima, we have to look west, to the heart of Asia. Here, a power had risen that was unlike anything the world had ever known: the Mongol Empire. Forged on the steppes by the genius of Genghis Khan, by 1260, his grandson, Kublai Khan, ruled an empire stretching from the Pacific to the Carpathian Mountains in Europe. Kublai was a man of immense ambition. After establishing the Yuan dynasty in China, he ruled from his opulent court at Xanadu. The Mongols believed heaven had decreed that the entire world should fall under their domain. There were no independent nations, only those who had submitted and those in a state of rebellion. And out in the far east, gleaming on the horizon, was one last prize that eluded his grasp: Japan. So why Japan? For one, it was rumored to be a land of gold. Conquering it would also cut off trade from his enemies and add a new army to his ranks. But more than anything, it was a matter of principle. The Great Khan did not tolerate defiance, and the Mongol war machine was the instrument of his will. It was arguably the most sophisticated military force on the planet. Their commanders were masters of combined arms warfare, coordinating vast formations of cavalry, infantry, and siege engineers who moved as one, responding to gongs and drums with terrifying discipline. They practiced psychological warfare, turning prisoners into human shields and leaving mountains of skulls to terrorize those who would resist. And they possessed a new technology that would change the face of war: gunpowder. They deployed bombs, thrown by hand or launched from catapults, that could shatter formations and morale in a single deafening blast. This was the force that now turned its gaze toward Japan. This was the storm gathering on the horizon. Across the sea, 13th century Japan was a world unto itself. Under the military rule of the Kamakura shogunate, it was a fiercely independent land governed by a warrior class: the samurai. For the samurai, war wasn't just a contest of strength. It was a ritual and art form governed by a strict code of conduct that would later be known as Bushido, the way of the warrior. Loyalty, honor, and self-sacrifice were everything. A battle would often begin with a lone samurai riding forth, loudly announcing his name and lineage, before challenging a worthy opponent to single combat. It was a clash of champions, a spectacle of individual skill honed over generations with the bow and the iconic curved sword. This proud, isolated warrior society was utterly unprepared for the kind of war the Mongols were bringing. While the shogunate had heard of the Mongols' power, they were a distant threat. That changed in 1266. Kublai Khan sent a letter demanding Japan submit and become a vassal state of the Mongol Empire. Pay tribute or face annihilation. For the samurai elite, this was an unthinkable insult. They didn't just refuse, they dismissed the envoys entirely, offering no reply. More missions were sent, and each time the response was contemptuous silence, Some accounts claim the Japanese even executed the Khan's emissaries to send a final bloody message. For Kublai Khan, this was an affront that could only be answered with one thing: invasion. The order was given. In the shipyards of southern Korea, a massive fleet was assembled. Historical accounts vary, but somewhere between 800 and 900 ships were prepared to carry the Khan's wrath. The army was a multinational force, a testament to the Mongols' vast empire. Legends inflate the number to 50,000, but modern estimates place the total invasion force for the 1274 campaign at around 20,000 to 40,000 soldiers, including Mongol horsemen, Chinese infantry, and conscripted Korean soldiers and sailors. Their strategy was simple: seize the small strategic islands between Korea and the Japanese mainland. The first of these was Tsushima. Tsushima's defense fell to the local governor, Sō Sukekuni. He was a seasoned samurai, but his forces were pitifully small. The legend in the title says 200 samurai, but the historical reality was likely even more dire. So, Sukekuni commanded a force of approximately 80 mounted samurai, supported by their retainers, a total of perhaps a few hundred men at most. These men weren't just soldiers. They were fighting to protect their own homes and families. As they watched the Mongol armada darken the horizon, they understood they were doomed. Many wrote their death poems, a final quiet moment of reflection before the storm. They weren't fighting for victory, they were fighting for honor and for time. On November 4th, 1274, the Mongol fleet was spotted off the coast of Tsushima. That same day, a fire broke out at the local shrine to Hachiman, the god of war. So, Sukekuni chose to see it as a divine warning to prepare. He rallied his small band of 80 samurai and their followers and galloped through the night to Komoda Beach. In the early morning hours of November 5th, the first Mongol landing craft hit the sand. The invasion of Japan had begun. Sukekuni, adhering to tradition, may have tried to parley, but the Mongols answered not with words, but with a volley of arrows. This was not how war was conducted. There was no honor, no ceremony. One Japanese warrior, determined to start combat the traditional way, rode forward and loosed a humming bulb arrow to signal the battle's start, shouting his challenge. The Mongols reportedly met this with confusion and then laughter. Then, without warning, their archers unleashed a coordinated storm of arrows, riddling the lone challenger with shafts before he could even draw his sword. In that moment, Sukekuni understood. This was not a battle between warriors. This was a clash between two worlds. Realizing tradition was meaningless here, he gave his final order: a full, desperate, suicidal charge into the heart of the enemy. The 80 samurai and their retainers crashed into the Mongol front lines. For a few brief moments, the invaders were stunned by the charge's ferocity. The samurai's superior armor deflected blows, and their razor-sharp blades cut through the lighter armored infantry. A high-ranking Mongol officer was even struck down by one of Sukekuni's warriors. But this was no ordinary battle. The Mongols quickly adapted, using their overwhelming numbers to encircle the small Japanese force. The sky went dark with massive arcing volleys of arrows designed to saturate an entire area, not target individuals. Then came the terror weapon, the Tetsuhao, or iron bombs. These were ceramic or cast iron shells packed with gunpowder and shrapnel, thrown by hand or launched from catapults, exploding in a deafening roar. Horses, terrified by the blast, threw their riders. Samurai were blinded and deafened. Loud gongs and war drums beat an incessant, disorienting rhythm, adding to the chaos. The charge faltered. The samurai were surrounded, isolated, and being systematically taken apart. the beach at Komoda became a slaughterhouse. Trapped, they refused to break and refused to surrender, fighting with suicidal courage as demanded by their code. One by one, they fell. Sō Sukekuni, the 67-year-old governor, fought at the head of his men until the very end, leading one last charge before he and his remaining warriors were swallowed by the horde and cut down. Virtually every one of the samurai defenders was killed. The last stand at Tsushima was over. With the island's defenders annihilated, the Mongols rampaged through Tsushima, slaughtering civilians and burning everything to the ground. But the sacrifice of Sō Sukekuni and his men was not entirely in vain. During the battle, a few small boats had managed to slip away, carrying a single message to the mainland. The invasion has begun. The warning had been sent. Japan would have precious time to prepare. The Mongol Armada moved on, first to the island of Iki, where another small garrison was heroically slaughtered, and then to the mainland itself, landing at Hakata Bay. But here they found a different situation. Warned of the invasion and the unfamiliar tactics, the mainland samurai were more prepared. They resisted with guerrilla-style raids and hit-and-run attacks from small boats. The fighting at Hakata Bay was brutal. The Japanese refused to engage in open battle, instead launching daring nighttime raids, swarming the larger Mongol vessels and setting them on fire. The Mongol advance stalled. Their commanders, perhaps shocked by the resistance or low on supplies, hesitated. Their massive fleet anchored in the bay, a tightly packed forest of ships. It was a decision that would prove fatal, because then the weather turned. As night fell, the sky turned black and the wind began to howl. A powerful storm descended on the bay. The Japanese would give it a name that would echo through history: Kamikaze, the divine wind. While historians debate the storm's exact scale and impact, it threw the Mongol fleet, whose ships were mostly flat-bottomed river vessels, ill-suited for the open ocean, into chaos. Ships were smashed against one another and driven onto the rocks. The first Mongol invasion was over, crippled by fierce resistance and a timely storm. The Mongol survivors limped back to the continent, their aura of invincibility shattered. In Japan, the story of the bloody defeat at Tsushima was transformed. It was no longer a hopeless slaughter. It became a testament to the unyielding spirit of the samurai. So, Sukekuni and his tiny band of warriors were immortalized as heroes, the embodiment of Bushido. And this is the answer to the question in our title. How did a few hundred samurai destroy thousands of invaders? They didn't win the battle. They didn't even survive it. But they destroyed the idea that Japan could be easily conquered. Their sacrifice bought time for the mainland to prepare, laying the groundwork for the invaders' ultimate failure. They forged a legend of defiance that would inspire the entire nation. The legend of Tsushima, combined with the miracle of the Kamikaze, created a powerful national myth. That Japan was a divine land, protected by its gods and defended by warriors of unparalleled courage. But the threat wasn't over. An enraged Kublai Khan began immediate preparations for a second invasion. In 1281, a new armada with a force that some sources claim was over 100,000 men set sail for Japan. But Japan, having learned its lesson, was prepared with stronger walls and new tactics. And once again, as the massive fleet lay at anchor, a second, even more powerful Kamikaze descended, annihilating the invasion force and ending the Khan's ambitions for good. The story of the samurai of Tsushima is a paradox. It's a tale of a catastrophic military defeat that became a profound spiritual victory. So, Sukekuni and his men were wiped out on the sands of Komoda Beach. By any conventional measure, they failed, but their legacy is one of sacrifice. Their last stand became the heroic prelude to the divine intervention of the Kamikaze. They didn't destroy the Mongol army with their swords, but they shattered the myth of Mongol invincibility with their spirit. They proved that even the world's greatest empire could be defied. The financial strain of defending Japan from 2 invasions would contribute to the eventual collapse of the Kamakura shogunate, but the legend endured. It became a cornerstone of the samurai ethos, a story told for generations, forever remembered as Japan's greatest last stand. The history of the samurai is filled with incredible tales of honor, conflict, and sacrifice. If you want to explore more of this fascinating world, be sure to check out our other videos on Japanese history. And to join our community of history lovers, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next journey into the past. What other legendary David versus Goliath battles from history should we cover next? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.